we're in orbit in a space shuttle where a neutral particle beam weapon beam comes up from the Earth towards a star visitor craft that's hovering at the edge of atmosphere, and it makes a radical right turn at the last moment.
Yeah.
And
I think we've seen that video.
Yeah, a lot of people have seen that. You know, that's just documentation that the deal was violated and that they've continued to fire on them. There, of course, have been various reports of downed UFOs since the 60s, and those were no accidents. It was deliberate shootings because these cabal-type folks want to grab these vehicles and tear them apart and back engineer them and find out what makes them tick and take that technology and reproduce it so that they can have advanced weapon systems to rule the world with.
And flying downrange, we got all three stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, and there were three people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16-millimeter camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera, on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as a decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar. Everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, the object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't see it. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 600 to 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you.
They
confiscated.
Well, first of all, the Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen."
Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. I got to take a break. Okay.
It's the weight of the evidence, and it's like J. Allen Hynek, who is the Air Force Blue Book guy. He said, look, he says, it's an embarrassment of riches. We have so much material. We have so much information. But if you take for one case that we have in the Disclosure Project, and that's a man who was the senior guy at the FAA, and they were tracking this object over Alaska, and it was at one point in the sky, and in one sweep of the radar, it would be 40, 50 miles away, moving completely non-linearly, not like an airplane. And we have the radar tape, we have the pilot report, we have all the evidence from the airline and the government. And this whistleblower who came forward, John Callahan, he said, "I'm one of the senior officials in the government that not only have the evidence, but was part of a cover-up to keep the American people ignorant of it."
And two men he identified as officers from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base brought him a model, an impression of a lower jawbone. They wanted a working model made. He was to keep no records, and the mold he created to make the model was broken and thrown in the trash as the Air Force officers left. Smith retrieved the broken mold pieces and put them back together at home, and he made his own model. He said he knew this just wasn't human. Few have ever seen it, and those that have can't identify it. An article in Len Stringfield's new book quotes certified dental technician Bruce Phillips as saying it's not like anything he'd come across in his 20 years in the business. The teeth are flat, no cutting surfaces. The shape of the jaw is different from humans, and the arch is much deeper. If it isn't identifiable as animal or human by people who should know, what is it? Could this finally be the first hard evidence the Air Force was indeed doing tests on alien bodies out at Wright Pat? Jack Smith says the jawbone model was made in 1979. And if you compare the shape of the jaw in the model with the shape of the jaw in this computer drawing of an alien, it's almost a perfect match. Some sources claim the drawing was part of a government UFO briefing in 1978, same time frame, and was based on photos from Wright Pat.
I'm Abby Martin, and this is Breaking the Set. So it's no secret that the U.S. military has over 5,000 nuclear warheads, enough to eliminate most life on Earth. But it may surprise you how much it costs just to maintain these weapons. Well, a new study from the Center for Non-Proliferation Studies just concluded that over the course of the next 30 years, the U.S. will spend nearly $1 trillion to either keep these weapons operational or modernize them. Because you know the Cold War never really ended. And if there's one thing we need to be spending billions of dollars on, it's mass killing machines. So while this country continues to lag behind in education, income equality, and sustainable energy, at least we can keep the people of the world up at night knowing that the Cold War is alive and well, and we got our nukes locked and loaded.
De Afonso foi ali que eu tive acidente e morri.
Não sento não. Ei, vai para fora!
You're going to have 6 retired members of the military now at the National Press Club in D.C. They're going to say these incidents go back to 1967, 1980. Now, they don't have any recent episodes. That could be because these gentlemen have all been retired for some time, so they haven't been in the loop. But they all say the same thing, that when they noticed these situations happening, they were all told you cannot say anything about them.
Which is good
the United Nations knows that they're going to be doing this press conference today because now they're going to appoint a Earth contact ambassador for those aliens. Her name is Moslin Othman, and she's going to be known as the leader of the Office for Outer Space Affairs.
But now the United Nations is getting ready for a contact with aliens from outer space. This is Moslin Othman. She's out of Malaysia. She will be planet Earth's first interstellar diplomat.
NASA's new Kepler spacecraft detecting hundreds of planets that they believe have the potential to support alien life forms. It is studying more than 150,000 stars, and that's just in one small patch of the sky, okay? If the 700-plus candidates are actually planets, it could triple the number of known planets in deep space.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a sixth-grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun, in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, "Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space." And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, "No, you have to understand, this is February, and we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies," he said, "against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids." And then he would repeat to me over and over, "And the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat." Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant. And I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system. And he told me back then that they didn't. He said, "Go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy." I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, "Oh my Lord, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat." And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, "You will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons." And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie. And we have witnesses here today that have shown you that these extraterrestrial beings, that these craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos, they can stop a rocket going into space that's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments, who have the courage to come forward here to support what Wernher von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And I will testify before the Congress that when I founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which I shut down a few years ago because I didn't believe we had a chance with this huge, integrated around the world, complex weapon system, that we had any chance at all of transforming that war industry into a space industry that could provide benefits, like Dr. Greer has said, of global warming. We can end that situation of that problem. We can end the energy crisis. We can build now non-polluting technologies. Werner von Braun used to tell me that we could have cars back then that drove around off the ground. He described this to me on beams so that we have no pollution on this planet. And we can solve the problems of the people that are urgent and potential, and the other animals and the other cultures on Earth and in space. And we can end the arms race without dislocating the industry jobs, without disrupting the economy, by transforming, Werner von Braun told me, the war industry into a global cooperative space industry that will provide, he said, finally, more jobs and profits on this planet than during any hot or cold wartime, more products and services that can be applied directly to solving the problems of this planet. And we can have a whole planet now that lives in peace on Earth, with all the cultures on Earth, and with all the extraterrestrial cultures in space. And these are words that Werner von Braun told me in 1974, and I will testify before the Congress under oath about everything I have said and more.
To a UFO expert, Paul Roberts, who runs Hegel Paranormal Intelligence here in Sacramento, says he too has been getting lots of reports. He says UFOs are usually attracted to military, nuclear bases, or gold, which is what makes this UFO sighting abnormal.
So why now only tells me one thing. Either there's something here in Sacramento that they're interested in and that we don't know about.
Residents of the Astrakhan region witnessed an unusual glow of light in the night sky on Friday. A bright round object with a spiral of light behind it hovered in the sky for nearly 30 minutes. The Astrakhan region emergency services received over 50 calls about the incident. Official data of the nature of the object is not yet available.
So it turns out that if aliens ever show up here on Earth, little green men might be the least of our problems. A new study indicates that instead, they'll probably be more like super intelligent dinosaurs, as smart and as cunning as humans. As one scientist put it, we would be better off not meeting them. Sleep tight.
The reptilian society is very structured, and there is a hierarchy where we have the elite group, which is the white-winged reptilians. They're very tall, actually have icy blue eyes, and very sleek but powerful bodies. And then it works down all the way, 7 levels in at least the Draco Empire, to a workforce or drone-like reptilians, which are quite small, perhaps 3 to 4 feet high, very brown, scaly skin, not very intelligent, basically do what they are told. In between, you have a military class, you have a spiritual or religious leaders that are very much like we would have bishops and cardinals and popes. They also have an intellectual caste, and then a general mass of people. For all intents and purposes, if you really wanted to know what the Draco Empire hierarchy was like, just look at the Hindu caste system, which was based on that. If you read about Hindu legend and even anything in East Asia, it talks about the Naga, which were the 7-headed reptilians, which came ashore in Asia after their continent sank in the Pacific, and is spoken about in all of the Southern Asian and East Asian legends and histories. The 7-headed reptilian, or Naga, really represents the 7 levels of the caste system in the Draco Empire hierarchy. The first time I ever had contact with reptilian beings was when I was working as a teenager, believe it or not, in the Montauk Project between 1970 and 1983. They were what I would consider to be of the military or warrior class, very large, powerful, mean-looking, scary-looking, and you're 13, 14 years old and you see an 8 or 9 foot tall creature with fangs and green and yellow eyes coming at you. It's very scary. They were kind of there as observers, along with observers from the U.S. government, the Israelis, the Russians, Germans, and even British. They were there to watch and exchange information on the programming techniques and the technology that the U.S. government had developed from other alien technologies, as well as what they had discovered from Atlanteans.
Reptilians are an ancient race. They were actually a hybrid mix many billions of years ago, which came into a foundation of us not really understanding who and what they are. We still don't really understand the total mixing, but we believe that there's a centering of space that brings them through those who come from another outside energy connected to parallel worlds. They didn't come from this world, certainly, and they didn't come from the 15th, which is the opposite end of the spectrum to us. They came from outside. They came from a world before time, and they were mixed with some of our own species. We can't deny them as human beings because they also have light orbs as we do, but they have unfortunately taken a lot of our stolen gold and created a set of hybrid human beings that seem to be very responsible for a lot of the downfall of our worlds and a downfall of quite a lot of the worlds of our friends. They've not only taken over our planet, which we like to know as Ki, as opposed to Earth, because in the higher worlds we know it as Ki. This is a representation of the energy that the Earth brings to us. They have also savagely harmed spaces outside these worlds, and some of our very dear friends today, such as the Arturians, the Ashtari, also the Andromedarians, also those from the Pleiades, plus numerous other cultures that also belong to a species of humanoid. These species have also been very degraded and very, very pulled down by a long-term reptilian rule. We are on the space now of actually emerging into a new world. Reptilians are falling back. Most of their original species, as in those who are still in full reptilian body, no longer exist. We have been working endlessly for many centuries to remove this, and we are hoping that one of their major centres, that seems to be where they all accumulated in the 16th and 1700s, being a landmass of mountains known as the Alps, particularly in a space that we know today as Switzerland, seems to have gravitated in a huge number of this species. I can't say that all Swiss are reptilian. I can only say that quite a lot of their orbital structures show reptilian space. These reptilian spaces are not really what we need to have in our environment. We cannot point a finger at someone and say we don't like you, but I think we know that there are a certain kind of human that is not very loving, not very honest, not very kind, not very generous, and will probably do anything in his power of ego to take over anyone else, particularly those of the more gentler species. I think on this present day, where we are in our year 2014, from the Gregorian calendar, it's very difficult indeed to say who are we, what are we, and where have we come from. I think the only point is to say that when these reptilians of full reptilian format actually leave the planet this time, they will not come back in orbital structures. They are not going to be harmed in this life. They won't even know if they are reptilian or not reptilian. But when they take themselves to the higher worlds, as in when they close their eyes finally and die, as in they leave the life source of the body behind, because as you know, no one ever dies. We only return to our orbital structures, and we then move forward to the higher worlds and the higher world play. When these of full reptilian body actually leave the planet this time, they will return to nowhere, because there is no structure that will allow them presence, and there is no space where they can actually rejuvenate. So as from the 25th of March 2014, I would like to say that we are extraordinarily hopeful that we will eventually close the door on what has been taking place amongst our worlds for billions upon billions upon billions of years, which in fact only took a total governorship of our worlds around the 1930s, 1940s, when the experiment of how many reptilians could actually be squeezed into mountain regions actually took place. Many reptilians have been on our planet for many thousands of years. They have been very much governed by those who prefer to rule by using warfare, as opposed to those who would rather form a governorship of hearts who belong to servitude for the people. I think we're all very aware these days that our governments don't really serve us, but they are serving someone else. And I think that's somebody else who seems to really enjoy taking our gold out of our bank vaults. I do believe that this gold is sent on ships, as in spaceships, to the higher worlds. And I do believe that this gold is then handed over to reptilian species who actually then recreate light orbs to be quite a devastating space that are then brought down into our communities as human beings. Sadly, this has been going on for a long time, and sadly, we have no way of telling totally who is who and what is what. The only thing I can say is, I don't think they can move any more of these light orbs into our space. I don't believe when they leave our space they can rejuvenate anywhere. And I do believe that we have some exceptionally amazing brothers of other species, as in our dear Arcturian brothers, who do have quite a few spaceships on the dark side of the moon. I also believe that there is a ship that the American government has talked about as being a comet. I don't think it's a comet. I think it's an Arcturian warship. And I think they are surveying us and hoping us the best of luck with our removal of reptilians. They have also undergone a shocking experience with their own islands, islands being their own planets. We wish them love, hope, and harmony, as we wish every species who desires reptilian-free governorship in hope and the presence of bringing a peaceful world into harmony for all times. Thank you.
¿Cómo quiere que el mundo recuerde a Hugo Chávez?
Dos palabras, dos que son un hombre. Un hombre, lo que soy, eso sí, hombre humano, pues. Hombre humano, porque hay seres humanos que no tienen forma humana, pero no son. Yo soy un humano.
Estamos ayudando a crear una raza híbrida. Es una raza destinada a la extinción, a menos que nosotros los ayudemos.
Como prueba de que lo que está viviendo es auténtico, tiene videos y fotografías de las naves que la abducen. Los videos son impresionantes. Son nocturnos tomados con su celular, donde se aprecia un disco volador desplazándose en un plano diagonal, con fuerte luz interior y que no se asemeja a nada parecido de la Tierra. Por otro lado, las fotografías son muy claras, bien definidas, con puntos de referencia o acercamientos donde se aprecia que se trata de discos voladores. Para finalizar, pudo fotografiar a uno de estos raptores. Tiene exámenes radiológicos donde presenta pruebas de implantes que tiene en el cerebro. Se determinó que era un objeto sin poderse calificar.
No tengo ninguna cicatriz donde se aprecie por dónde entró el objeto.
La mandaron a hacerse exámenes y el doctor encontró un ritmo cardíaco parecido a un bebé, pero no se veía el bebé. A Giovanna le fue practicado un aborto en su casa al tener complicaciones con el feto, y lo que encontró el médico fue algo espantoso, un híbrido entre humano y otra raza. Se grabó todo el proceso, las imágenes son fuertes. Se encontró una especie de placenta donde dentro se encontraba el producto, con características humanas. Se observan 2 extremidades superiores y 2 inferiores, el torso, pero la cara parece más a la raza que la está abduciendo.
Un aborto, con una malformación. Era un monstruo.
50% of all Americans believe the extraterrestrial explanation accounts for these sightings. Up to as many as 90% of Americans believe the government is outright lying. The polls are unambiguous. Year after year, the same thing. In fact, if you could talk anonymously to people, even in Congress, probably 50% of members of Congress already convinced that the extraterrestrial presence explains this phenomena. Disclosure is at hand. It is very close, and the American people need to prepare themselves very soon for an announcement from our government that there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial presence engaging this planet and the human race.
As UFO videographers and investigators around the world continue to document that strange, unidentified craft are navigating in our skies, as well as in outer space, the mass public and even former U.S. presidents appear convinced that UFOs are real. Is it an above top secret truth that extraterrestrials are observing us from their technologically advanced spaceships?
It's not like any aircraft I've ever seen. Doesn't behave like balloons, didn't look like a blimp. What was it?
It was just weird. The second you see it, you look at it and go, that's not an aircraft. What is that?
While many people still believe that a flying saucer from beyond Earth crashed near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, the United States Air Force still officially denies it with what they call their final report. In it, they conclude there was no UFO crash, and every eyewitness account of an alien body was actually a crash test dummy used in high-altitude parachute drops.
I don't think the Americans should believe anything that our government says about Roswell. How could we? They denied that it existed for so long, then it was a weather balloon, now it's a super-secret weather balloon. Who knows what it'll be next week?
It is no coincidence that some of the past American commander-in-chiefs seem very interested in UFOs. Before he was president, Jimmy Carter witnessed the flight of a UFO and even reported it to authorities. Subsequent presidents also expressed their concern about visitors from outer space.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Interestingly, after he left the White House, Ronald Reagan confirmed he saw what he believed was an alien craft when he was governor of California from his plane and asked his pilot to follow it until it shot off into space. And when Bill Clinton was president, he publicly stated, quote, "As far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. If the U.S. Air Force did recover any alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know." In the 2008 U.S. presidential election, some candidates seemed very open to the possibility that UFOs exist, and one came forward with his own tale of a close encounter. As our current exploration of Mars continues with NASA rovers, perhaps one day NASA cameras will roll up to this ever-controversial structure known as the face on Mars, which many believe was created by an advanced ET civilization. Maybe when the mystery of this monument and nearby pyramid structures is solved, we will be closer to proving that alien life does in fact exist, even on planets so close to ours. But those who've chronicled the UFO evidence most to date think the ultimate proof will come from everyday people pointing cameras to the sky.
We, the people, are going to prove that this is truth. Not the scientists, not the authorities, not the military. We, hundreds or thousands of people with our cameras in our hands, are going to be able to produce the evidence that is going to be seen around the world and is going to prove that this is real.
Fala, filho da puta! Calma aí, maluco. Porra, eu vou chocar o bicho, cara. Aí, não falei que ele ia falar, ô?
Main types alien type 1 the greys. Of this type there are several subtypes. All tend to appear grayish in color and for this reason are referred to as greys. Gray type of this is the type most commonly referred to as the greys, also known as Zeta Reticuli from the Zeta Reticulum star system, the Bernard star neighboring the Orion area. They function in a mode that is apparently military in nature with a rigidly defined social structure that holds science and conquering worlds to be the prime movers. They are normally about 4.5 feet tall with large heads and black, wraparound eyes. They have limited facial features, slit mouth and no nose to speak of. There seem to be two main social classes. One is the more hawkish and is more abrupt, crude and blunt. The more dove-like ones are more refined and capable of a more business-like behavior towards humans, and prefer to use more diplomatic behavior to gain control over humans. This type of gray is what I believe is being referred to as the orange class of grays. They seem to be emotionless by human standards and therefore are seen as cruel in their treatment of human beings. They are able to take human lives without any regard for that individual. They apparently can use certain substances of the human body for their sustenance and therefore appear to be carnivorous in regards to humans. I also read that they extract fluid from some part of the human brain during intense emotional response fear and are able to use it like a recreational drug. It is my understanding that these greys are actually servants to a master race of reptilian-type aliens and are trying to prepare the Earth for their arrival by gaining control over the Earth through many means. They tend to enjoy the feeling of freedom they have on Earth, away from their masters, and would desire the help of humans in confrontations with the reptilians. Which appears to be a consideration for the near future mid-90s. These greys have their best known bases in New Mexico and Nevada, but are also known to have bases in many countries of the world. Gray type B tall greys from Orion, usually about 7 to 8 feet tall. Reports often exaggerate their height as being 9 to 12 feet, with facial features somewhat similar to gray type A, with the exception of the large nose found on type B greys. These greys also have technologies that allow them to perform certain actions that appear miraculous. These greys are less viscous towards humans than type A greys, but are still considered hostile. They tend to influence more through political controls and negotiated agreements with those in power. Their main bases seem to be in the Aleutian Islands. These are the type seen not long ago in eastern Russia. Gray type C. These are the shortest of the greys and tend to be about 3.5 feet tall. Their facial features are very similar to the Zeta Reticuli greys and are of the same root race. They are just as hostile to humans as the Zetas. They are from a star system near the shoulder of Orion called Bellatrix. Alien type to the reptilians, a genetics akin to reptiles. These are highly advanced entities but viewed as being of a negative, hostile or dangerous disposition, since they regard humans as a totally inferior race. They would perceive us much the way we would perceive a herd of cattle. They are carnivorous in regard to humans. There is supposedly a driven planetoid or asteroid inhabited by 30 million of these lizard folk that is to enter our solar system in the mid-90s if the present schedule is kept. They consider Earth to be their own ancient outpost and would expect to have complete control of the entire planet upon their return. Their own planet is becoming unable to adequately support life and they need somewhere else to live. These are the aliens who are served by the type A greys. Alien type 3 human type aliens. Human type. These are of a genetic base similar to humans of Earth. They appear of normal height 5-6 foot and tend to be fair-skinned with blonde hair. These entities have been abducted by the greys or are the offspring of abductees and have been trained by the greys as servants. These entities are totally subservient to the greys. Human type D. These are aliens of similar genetics to Earth humans and also, it seems, of the humans that serve the greys. During some abduction projects, twins either identical or fraternal are induced in a female subject. During the first trimester, one of the fetuses is removed. It is then grown to maturity by group A. Abductees will meet their twins during some abductions. Very limited contact has been made by these humans. Group C. Genetically modified Earth-born humans. These humans are comprised of two classes and should not be confused with Group D greys. Class W workers. This class is the smallest in physical stature. They are described as approximately 3.5 feet in height, large head and eyes, pale white in complexion. These workers were created by Group A through genetic modification of Earth human fetuses. Their function is to perform menial tasks requiring limited reasoning abilities. In mental capacity, they are equivalent to a 5-year-old child. Class T technicians. These humans are basically the same as Class W. They are slightly larger, at approximately 4.5 feet in height. Their complexion is tan or yellowish. Their reasoning and deductive abilities are higher. This allows them to perform more complex operations. They are often seen operating ship controls and in transport activities. Both classes W and T are telepathically camouflaged to appear as greys to abductees. This is done to conceal the true nature of Group C. It is felt that perception of Group A maintaining a human slave population would hinder future contact efforts. This point will undoubtedly be a source of much heated debate in the near future. Group D greys. Of the 6 groups discussed in this paper, the greys appear to represent the only non-human contingent. The following data should be considered tentative at best. Height is approximately 5.5 feet. The head is large, eyes large, black and very slanted. Skin color is dark gray and non-porous. All data so far indicates that they may be a cetacean-based life form. On Earth, this comprises the species of whales and dolphins. Descriptions of gray skin color and texture closely match that of dolphins. The stare and stun effects approximate that performed by dolphins on potential enemies, such as sharks and barracuda. Human and dolphin fetuses are nearly identical, up to a certain development stage. Group E human/grey.
So here's some Swiss money. Here you got the DNA helix on it. The old 10 francs shows the Nibiru system. There's some good videos about it on the internet, on YouTube. But I wanted to show you this here. Here's the octagon pillars, as I just showed you on the video. There they are, 8 pieces. That has a meaning. This is octagon. And here it shows a grey. Some aliens, look at it. The Swiss reptilians. I mean, these are no humans, look at it. These are Swiss reptilians, the Nazis, who financed Adolf Hitler, gave Red Cross passes to the worst mass murderers you can imagine. There, it's a grey. It even is grey. Okay, and they are standing in the octagon. Look at it. So this is Switzerland, the home of the Nazis and the center of hatred against humanity.
Oh, okay. I don't believe you.
Now, it's shot at an iPhone looking through the eyepiece of a telescope, so it's kind of hard to see, so we blew it up.
I don't know if you can see that, but there's something orbiting that planet over there.
Elijah shot the video on December 20th around 5:05 p.m. in Sacramento.
I saw something that I'd never seen before. I saw another object orbiting this, whatever it was up there. And I've never seen anything like that before.
He thought it was a little strange, so he put his phone down, called his nephew, picked up the phone, and shot this second video.
Oh my God, it blew up. What the? Something just blew.
Once again, it's his camera phone shot through a telescope lens, so we zoomed in and we slowed it down.
As soon as I put the camera to the telescope, it just blew up. And I didn't know what to say.
I don't blame him. It certainly looks suspiciously like an explosion.
So I sent the video off to Dr. Stephen Moran. He's the guy that wrote Astrophysics for Dummies. He said, Cody, I don't recognize the explosion as an astronomical phenomenon. I'm not sure what that means.
Well, whatever it was almost never seen by Elijah or anybody else. Not because it's a tiny speck in a big old empty sky, but because of Craigslist.
You almost got rid of that like what, a week before?
Almost got rid of it a week before. I was trying to sell it on Craigslist, and I was getting offers. And, man, you know what? At this time, I'm glad I didn't sell it.
Aliens. Cody said he contacted a Vatican expert about the explosion and was told it could be some sort of light refraction.
Could be. Who knows?
Or aliens.
Or aliens, yeah, that's a possibility.
Okay, we've never seen pictures like this before from NASA. Amazing video of what looks like tornadoes on the sun.
Signs in the heavens and the earth.
And what we're seeing is that these events continue one after another.
There's been a lot of buzz over the last few weeks about strange sounds being heard in the atmosphere. People around the world and here at home have reported hearing some bizarre noises.
Some strange noises heard around the world the last few weeks, from Arizona to England and right next door in Manitoba, all showing folks alarmed by what sounds like a noise straight out of a science fiction flick.
Sonidos muy similares a estos.
I've never seen this before. Are you doing video?
I have never seen this before, and I'm doing video. That's
Can
correct.
we please send it to James Bain and the Weather Channel?
That we are in the birth bank. Something is going on. We are in unprecedented, uncharted waters.
بالمجرى ومصدرها وتحديد نوعيتها، وبيبين صادر لاحقا عن الوزير المصدر مجرور مقفل ويرجح أن يكون
A terrible mystery gripping the world right now. Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead.
For the second year on New Year's Eve, birds are falling from the sky in Beebe.
A mystery in Beebe, Arkansas. Birds falling dead from the sky on New Year's Eve for the second year in a row. Wildlife officials say
no one knows how these dolphins died, but hundreds have been found on beaches in Chiclayo, Peru. At least 260 dolphins washed ashore across a roughly 60-mile stretch of beach. Officials aren't sure what happened to them. An event like this is particularly unusual because dolphins aren't normally found in these seas.
Everywhere you look, you see the carcass of a dead turtle. Small turtles, large turtles, dozens of them, dead and scattered along the banks of Smith Lake. The birds just started falling from the sky.
This is really weird. Hundreds of birds literally just dropped from the sky and then landed on I-95, bringing traffic there to a crawl.
But earlier today, a lot of confusion and concern when birds which were flying in the sky started to crash to the pavement.
There were hundreds of them.
Never ever in my life have I seen anything like this. Crazy. Totally crazy.
Never seen it. I travel this all the time.
But I haven't heard of anything locally like that, ever.
Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead.
Couldn't figure out what the heck happened. Never seen anything like it.
Something strange has happened in the skies above Britain. Police throughout Scotland and the north of England received calls of a bright light streaking across the sky on Saturday night.
These images over Harrogate, but there have been sightings across the country from Scotland, Wales, the north, right down to the East Midlands.
It was what observers are calling one of the best meteors ever seen in the UK. The object was seen as far south as Devon and may have landed in the English Channel.
Dozens of viewers have said they've seen a massive bright light in the sky in the last few hours, with most claiming it was a meteor.
You'll be hearing a lot about this next item over the next 11 months, but astronomers have identified a new asteroid about 150 feet across, which is headed our way and may come so close to Earth that it will pass between us and the satellites orbiting in space above us. There's some debate in the scientific community about whether a direct hit is even possible. This is called 2012 DA-14. They say this will be the closest pass of an asteroid in the history of tracking such things. And again, while this pass is supposed to miss us, the experts all say there's nothing wrong with making sure your affairs are in order.
So should we be nervous about this whole thing?
Well, this is a serious story because the latest round of solar flares captured in this incredible video. Take a look at this. It's from NASA overnight. The burst that you're seeing there, charged particles erupting off the surface of the sun. And we saw an even bigger solar flare Tuesday night. Right now, all of those particles are racing toward the Earth, as you said, about 4 million miles per hour. And it's growing as it gets closer to us. On top of that, the problems will arise when the flares reach the Earth's magnetic field, apparently. That's when we could see mass power.
It's like a cloud of birds, but a giant cloud.
It's really creepy. It's kind of like, is the world coming to an end here or something? I mean, it's scary.
The whole sky will fill up with black birds.
But it's crazy. It's scary, ain't it?
How many do you think?
Like a million.
It's like we're being held hostage.
Held hostage in maybe a 3-mile radius by blackbirds.
When it comes down, it sounds like rain coming down. I mean, literally, from inside of our apartment, you think that it's raining outside.
What a sight this is. Thousands of dolphins swarm a whale watching boat off the coast of Orange County.
You're looking at hundreds upon hundreds of dolphins breaching out of the water. The unusual spectacle was caught on tape.
Trying to figure out what caused that flash in the sky in the Northwest Valley. It happened this morning, right here. If you haven't seen it, here we go. During Andrea's traffic report, look, we're going to slow it down for you right there. Look in the background. Looks like some kind of very bright light, almost like it was an explosion or something. Our first thought was maybe a transformer. But we checked with APS and SRP. They said they haven't had any trouble. We haven't had any reports of any explosions either. Here it is, one more time for you in slow-mo. So it is still a mystery.
Here it comes. Okay, release easily.
Take it away from us, Lord. Take it, Lord. Take it, Lord. Take it away from us, Jesus. Holy Father God, all powers in your Son's name. Take this up away from our home.
And those storms are not over just yet. Cities torn apart after taking a direct hit from rare winter tornadoes. They're now bracing for more of the same.
Among the places hardest hit, Harrisburg, Illinois. 175-mile-an-hour winds, 2 football fields wide, left people dead. Homes were shredded, a strip mall flattened, entire buildings knocked off their foundations.
It's just unreal. It's like a war zone.
A somber Saturday morning as hundreds of thousands wake up to sheer devastation. His entire town's all gone, flattened in a flash. This massive storm spawned more tornadoes in one day than we usually see in an entire month.
Here's what we know right now. At least 29 people dead. The second round of killer tornadoes just this week.
95 tornadoes ripped through yesterday. If those are all confirmed reports, this would be the greatest tornado day, one-day event in March for all history.
It was almost never seen by Elijah or anybody else. Not because it's a tiny speck in a big old empty sky, but because of Craigslist.
You almost got rid of that like what, a week before?
Almost got rid of it a week before. I was trying to sell it on Craigslist, and I was getting offers. And man, you know what? At this time, you know, I'm glad I didn't sell it.
Aliens. Cody said he contacted a Vatican expert about the explosion and was told it could be some sort of light refraction.
Could be. Who knows?
Or aliens.
Or aliens, yeah, that's a possibility.
33 News Morning Edition. The time is 6:26. Okay, so you know how we ask you to send in your pics so we can put them in our newscast? Well, you got to see what one viewer claims his friend found at a hunting camp in Berwick. I really don't even know what that is. The guy who sent it in didn't want us to mention his name, but tells us this is totally for real. He says last weekend his friend's family found one of their hunting camps destroyed, but the SIM card was still there, and so was this crazy image. I put the pic up on Facebook, and this is what some of you had to say about it. Steven says, keep going down. This is a computer-generated Photoshop image, and it's definitely not real. Okay, the next guy says, bring it up. Those swamp people need to eat some food with those 2-inch biceps, okay. And our next person says, hey, I've got one that my friend snapped up here in North Louisiana with the same cam. Stance alien girl-looking thing floating in the background. So here's that pic. Okay. Really creepy, isn't it? And we got the music to go along with it. Breathe.
Ya, güey. Ya, güey. ¿Te quedas aquí? ¡Se valoran, ya no! Ya, güey. No, ya voy por él. ¡Ay, no mames, güey! ¡Ya vino! ¡No mames, güey! ¡Ya vino! ¡No mames, güey! ¡Ya vino! Ya voy por él. वो जगह से आगे नहीं आ रहा है वो जगह से आगे नहीं हो रहा वीडियो है वीडियो दे वो रॉकेट में पीछे आग लगी है रॉकेट में आग लगी है
वो क्या है
आसमान में अजूबा
वो क्या है
आसमान में अजूबा
क्या जूम करके आदमी का फोटो ले रहे क्या
Ever wonder what might lie out there deep in space? Do you want to believe we're not alone, that somewhere in the universe intelligent life may actually exist?
Our next guest says there is life out there. It does exist. Dr. Charles Hall says he spent 2 years working with extraterrestrial beings during his time with the American military. He claims the US military has actually been in contact with alien species for years. And Dr. Charles Hall is here to explain, along with his wife Marie, live from what Bugs Bunny used to call Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, thank you both for your time. Terrific to have you with us. Firstly, Charles, can you tell us your story of how you managed to come into contact with these beings as you worked with the military?
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I enlisted in the Air Force in July 1964, and I was trained as a weather observer. And I was sent to Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, outside Las Vegas, Nevada. And for 2.5 years, I was sent up to the gunnery ranges up at Indian Springs, and I was given a clearance to allow me to go anywhere in Dreamland as long as I was alone. I discovered that up there at the north end of Indian Springs Valley, which you can see on the map in the state of Nevada here in America, that there was a base which the U.S. Air Force maintained for a group of extraterrestrials who were tall and white. And I, as the duty weather observer, was allowed to go up there, or they were allowed to come down to where I was. And the interaction took place over more than 2 years.
Wow.
During those 2 years, I also came across, I also interacted to a lesser extent with the Roswell grave.